In the last couple of days, Paul Cheon released a video of him drafting the best Duskmourn deck he's ever seen. He went as far to say, nothing will top this deck. Then Matt sent me one of his drafts, and I have to say, I think Matt's deck tops Paul's.
Although it's not like, a contest or anything, but I'm pretty proud of it.
In this episode, we'll review Paul's best deck and walk through Matt's draft that led not only to the best Duskmourn deck I've ever seen, but honestly, the best draft deck of any format I think I've ever seen. This one will be fun to watch, and you're not going to want to miss it. We'll start by looking at Paul's deck real quickly and let him explain it, so let's run the video.
Nothing will top this deck. This is literally the best deck, one of the best decks you will ever see in this format. I've now drafted this set 70 plus times, and I am very confident there will only be a handful of decks that you will ever see among all content creators better than what we have here. Yeah, maybe there's a deck with triple Valgot's Onslaught. I don't know. But this was the smoothest trophy ever. Clean 7-0, great curve, great interaction, card draw. What was missing from this deck? I don't know. Maybe like another decent 4-mana play over one of these 5s. I don't know, but the 5s were good. Like, this deck was just everything. I guess I could have used another Gremlin Tamer. I'm sure people have had like 4 Gremlin Tamers in their deck, but honestly, just in terms of sheer power, nothing will top this deck.
Well, what if I told you Matt's deck had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 blue-white signpost uncommons? That's enough spoilers. Let's take a look at Matt's draft.
Yep, let's dive in. So diving right into the pack 1, pick 1, you can obviously see that this is a pretty stacked pack already. Obviously, there's Mind Skinner, which is what I picked, and we'll get into that in a second. But you can already see, like, even the uncommons. You've got things like Popular Egotist, which is a decent card in black-red. You've got Razorkin Hordecaller, which is another decent card in black-red. You've got things like Inquisitive Glimmer as well on the multicolored blue-white front. We'll come back to that one. But obviously Mind Skinner's not the highest win rate in the pack, but I haven't played with it yet. And I saw it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take it because who knows? Maybe I'll get to play it. And at the very least, maybe I'll get to have a little bit of fun with it. So,
and there is something to be said about taking cards that you don't have experience with, letting it hurt your win rate. But it does give you more experience for being better the next time you play. Like, there is something to be said about that. So I kind of like the Mind Skinner pick for the most fun and for the most experience.
Right. Yeah. And I know that, even though it wasn't the highest win rate, I've lost to this card several times. And so at the very least, I was going to get a little bit of payback on some folks by picking it myself.
I would have probably have picked for win rate purposes, right? One of either Razorkin Hordecaller or Patchwork Beastie. Those are the 2 that stand out to me. But Mind Skinner is a perfectly good pick.
All right. So pack 1, pick 2. The black-red love really continues. And I was sort of thinking at this point, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should have taken the Hordecaller because you've got both the pretty bomb black-red rare here, and then also the signpost uncommon. Obviously, I take Gremlin Tamer here, both because Gremlin Tamer is actually, I think, the highest win rate card in the pack. It's got a 60% win rate, so it's a great card. I recognize here that I'm kind of committing pretty early to blue-white, or at the very least, very strongly leaning in that direction. But I mean, I don't think I'm going to take the Sprinter. I don't think I'm going to take the Skin Ripper. And Gremlin Tamer is an excellent card. And I did see the Glimmer in my previous pack. So I'm thinking, it's pack 1. That might wheel. At which point, like, I'm setting myself up pretty well here, I think. So, ended up taking the Gremlin Tamer.
Yeah, you are shooting the moon with Gremlin Tamer, but I will say, out of all cards to try to just go right into a given archetype and go for it, there's not much better of a pick than Gremlin Tamer to do that with.
Right.
Right. It's perhaps the most powerful, like, signpost uncommon card in the whole set. There are 2 that I would definitely take over it. I would take the Brood Spinner and the Bookworm. Oblivious.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Oh, you're talking about the uncommons, not in the pack. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And that's because those 2 are also splashable, whereas so that leaves it open to like 7 decks rather than just 1. Whereas Gremlin Tamer it is not really splashable, but when you hit this on turn 2, it's I think more powerful than
Pretty
the other
brutal.
ones.
Pretty brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say it is somewhat splashable in like a black white Eerie deck. If you do manage to do like a black white Eerie. But yes, you're right. Those are the others. The other ones are more splashable, obviously.
I would have taken the split skin doll just as the most powerful monocolor card in the pack,
Right.
but I can understand.
But I recognize taking the split skin doll basically was committing me to blue white anyway, so I figured I'll just take the one that has a higher win rate. Even though they're pretty similar. Honorable mention is Spine Seeker Centipede, right? Obviously, I could have gone into blue green with this as well. So there's there were a number of options on the table. Path 3, I figure I might as well continue rolling with it. But Inquisitive Glimmer comes up, might as well take it early on. I'm looking at the rest of the pack. I mean, there's some good cards here. Head Shredder's a good card. Vengeful Possession's a good card. Obviously, there's things like Murder, which is just a straight up good card. But obviously, if I'm committing, I might as well commit completely and take the Inquisitive Glimmer. And if worse comes to worse, even if it doesn't make things cheaper, it's a 2/3 for 2, so that's not bad. Next up, I'm drafting all the things that help with Eerie or enchantment costs, so I'll take the Bottomless Pool and Locker Room. Good delay spell early on. Later on, potential card draw engine. There's not really a lot in this competing. You could make a case for like Jump Scare maybe, but it's not going to compete. I think with the Bottomless Pool here.
Yeah, Bottomless Pool is the best card in the pack, and you're feeling great at this point that you're
right. Yeah, I'm 4 cards in.
Immediately.
I'm 4 cards in, and I'm like, people are just passing cards that are going to work in this deck, so that's great. Next pack, I feel just as great. I will say here, the right pick was probably Unnerving Grasp. It's got a higher win rate, but looking at my deck and looking at kind of like what I'm thinking about right here, with Gremlin, Grand Entryway, Elegant Rotunda combos amazingly with Gremlin Tamer and with Inquisitive Glimmer. And so, I ended up going with that. But I would say probably the correct pick here is the Unnerving Grasp, just if you're looking at pure win rate and what it's going to do for you. I recognize that one going in. Honorable mention, Abandoned Campground, right? I could have done something with lands, but there's just too many good cards to take.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the deck too much. I do think that is maybe the one weakness is that we don't really pick up a great dual land or kind of fixing to help out a little bit more with the mana. But I mean, you're not taking it over these two. I mean, Unnerving Grasp is just like a mythic uncommon, and the gap is greatly diminished on how powerful Unnerving Grasp is over Grand Entryway in this deck. Like in this deck, Grand Entryway is so good, and really only this deck. But so I get the idea of taking that there.
And then we go into pick 6, and oh look, another Mind Skinner. So I may not have taken this if there was something else that was really good in the pack, but there's just not anything else that's really good in the pack. If I was in different colors, Overgrown Zealot's great. If I was doing blue green, Paranormal Analyst is an excellent uncommon, but there's not a lot here, so I'm just going to take a second Mind Skinner.
Yeah, that makes sense. Paranormal Analyst, you can get into a Manifest Dread blue-white with like Unsettling Twins and Twist Realities and things like that.
That's not the version of the deck I'm building.
Exactly. You're so set up for the enchantment version that it doesn't really make sense here. Emerge from the Cocoon can also be something that's interesting as well, but like, I don't know. At this point, you already have one Mind Skinner. Why not try 2 Mind Skinners and do the thing?
Right. Yeah. If I'm just going to do it, let's do it. And it's an enchantment to boot. That's the other reason I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, this is another enchantment. I can't reduce the cost of it, but I can get a free Gremlin. I can trigger Eerie on other things. So why not? Next pack. I mean, I'm clearly in the right lane here at this point. I know this because I'm getting a pick 7 Unable to Scream, so I don't know what else to say about it. There's not a lot of competition here. I mean, I'm frankly surprised to see a pick 7 Spine Seeker on pack 1, and
Glassworks for that matter too.
And Glassworks, yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, I even thought about it because that's a fairly splashable card, but I was like, Unable to Scream's just as good, so I'm just going to stick to 2 colors here. So I don't know really what was going on in this draft, but there were some good cards going around pretty late. Next up, Meat Locker. I mean, pretty obvious. It's going to go great in the deck. Not much to say. I mean, you could make a case for something like the rare dual land. Just in case I picked up something green, but I'm not going to take it over Meat Locker. Meat Locker is going to be a fantastic card in this deck. So,
agreed.
Next up, another Inquisitive Glimmer. You could make a case for Friendly Ghost as sort of a nice little buffer, but I mean, I've already got 3 rooms. So I'm going to take another Signpost uncommon. Next up, we have the Megalodon. Right? I mean, you could make a case for Emerge from the Cocoon. I'm not really into Erratic Apparition. Yes, it has Eerie, and yes, I have a lot of enchantments, but it's just not a very good card. And the win rate reflects it. I mean, Megalodon's win rate is basically the same, but it's at least more useful in that it potentially gets me a land. And, if I need it, it's a top end creature with vigilance. So, I think that was the right pick here, but I actually thought about this one for a while.
I agree that this was the right pick, but I have an interesting reason why. So, in most blue-white decks, I think I would actually choose Erratic Apparition here because this is exactly the deck that it's passable in, right? Like when you need your 23rd playable, you actively want to play that in this deck with enough enchantments. That said, I wouldn't pick it because I don't think you need to care about a 23rd playable here. You're getting past everything you want. So when that's the case, you'd rather have the opportunity to like have both a dual finisher plus land in a way, and that's what the Megalodon does. Now you could say that you're gonna get probably all your choices of Megalodons, throughout this draft anyway, probably. So it does kind of go both ways, but whereas I'm confident at this point, I'm going to end up cutting the Apparition. I may play the Megalodon.
Yeah, and the other reason, and I forgot about this, but the other reason I was thinking about it at this point is Mind Skinner is a triple blue. This gets me a 3rd island if I need it in an emergency situation.
Good point.
Here, I just take Clammy Prowler. You could make a case that I maybe should have picked the Branch Snapper just on the off chance that I end up splashing green. But I at this point I didn't care a lot, so I just picked the on color card, signaled to my neighbor like, hey, stay the hell out of blue, even if you were thinking about it. Doesn't seem like anybody was thinking about blue, but I might as well, at least send that signal.
I think that's the right pick for that reason, the signal.
And here I take the Peculiar Lighthouse on the wheel because I may end up playing green and having that, playing red, and that's useful. And Enter the Enigma is just not a good card.
Yep.
And then we've got, Underwater Tunnel. I don't think this is going to make the deck, but I'll gladly take it. And then I get forced and Emerge from the Cocoon. So, I absolutely hate it, but sure, that was sarcastic. So into pack 2, some great cards here, not necessarily in my colors. Head Shredder's a good card. Veteran Survivor's a good card. Obviously, I'm just going to take the Underwater Tunnel here.
Bottomless Pool.
Bottomless Pool. Yes, I'm obviously going to take the Bottomless Pool here. Again, Patchwork Beastie in this pack, good card. Another Spine Seeker Centipede. So like somebody's going to do well in green. It's not me. Bottomless Pool's great here. And then I get into, I get given, probably one of the better mythics in white, in the Wandering Rescuer. So obviously I'm going to take that. You could make a case here for, Fear of Surveillance is a great card. Stay Hidden, Stay Silent's a great card, but Wandering Rescuer is a better card. And here, Trapped in the Screen, I did have a fun thought about Central Elevator Promising Stairs. Obviously, I wasn't going to go that off the reservation with this because Trapped in the Screen is just a great card. But it was interesting. Unwilling Vessel, also kind of an honorable mention here, just given the number of enchantments I had. But I realized I was, aside from delay removal, like tempo removal, I didn't have any real removal at this point, and Trapped in the Screen was the clear win.
Yeah, agreed. I will say, like, your deck, you have quite a few rooms going. So if you wanted to win in any other way other than hurting your opponent's point total, you could have went with the Central Elevator, just deck them or
I would have so many ways to win. Life total, decking my opponent with Mind Skinners, or just winning the game outright with Promising Stairs. But I figured safe bet here is take the good removal that's also an enchantment and also triggers all of my Eerie. And so that was a pretty easy pick. Although, as we'll see in coming picks, I may have, if I had the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, I might have chosen differently. But because next up, we see both a Sheltered by Ghosts and a Trapped in the Screen. Obviously, I'm taking the Sheltered by Ghosts here as just the superior card. But at this point, I'm just like over the moon. Nobody's playing white. Nobody's playing blue. I get every single one of these cards that I want. I'm thinking, hey, I might get wheeled this Trapped in the Screen at this point because nobody's playing it. It's pick 4 in this pack, and no one's taken probably one of the best uncommons in the set in Sheltered by Ghosts. I'll take it.
If I had ever been able to see the rest of a draft pod, how their decks were looking at drafting, I would want to see your draft pod. I just curious. Everyone decided to go into anything but white and blue.
I guess so. I mean, and to be fair, we saw some really great black, red. We saw some great green. So there's a lot of good. There was a lot of good stuff in their first pack. So I could understand other people gravitating towards things. I just lucked out in a lane here.
Yeah.
So next up, we see another Trapped in the Screen. And also a Grand Entryway and Elegant Rotunda. So I mean, I'm going to take the Trapped in the Screen for even more removal here. Stalked Researcher, honorable mention, right? Plays good in the Eerie deck. Tunnel Surveyor even plays good in the Eerie deck. So I mean, I'm looking at this right now, and again, no one is playing blue-white or blue-white enchantments. So I feel pretty good about it. Next up, we see double Get Out in this pack. Another Stalked Researcher. I go with the Get Out simply because of the flexibility of it. It's a counter if I need it. Or if somebody plays an instant or sorcery targeting my creature, I can bounce the creature or bounce an enchantment to evade removal. So there's a lot of good uses for it as a tempo play, as well as just as a general counter. Next up, I take the Fear of Surveillance. It's a good, excellent 2-drop, especially in this deck. And there's not much else to say about it, I think. I mean, honorable mention, obviously, another Meat Locker. Banish from Sight, also not a bad card. Abandoned Campground, right? Again, for the land, the problem was I really did want to take some dual lands, but every time a dual land came up, it was like, well, crap, there's a much better card that I kind of need to take here.
Yeah, I don't blame you here. I mean, I am a big advocate of fixing where you have a slot, but not over one of the best 2-drops for your deck possible. Right. Combined with, the land would probably be the third thing I'd pick here. Yeah, you just
after Meat Locker and after the Fear.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Glimmerburst. It would have been interesting to take the fact that Marvin made it all the way to like a pick 8 in this pack. But I don't have any triggered ability activated abilities really. I've got a lot of triggered abilities. So Marvin wasn't really going to do much in this deck. And obviously Glimmerburst is all about this deck. So that was a pretty easy pick. On the wheel here, I take the Shepherding Spirits just to have a cycler for white to match the cycler in blue. I did think about both the Erratic Apparition and the Piranha Fly. At this point, I already had quite a few 2-drops, and I was just thinking about trying to round out the top end of the deck a little bit in case for some reason I didn't, my early drops didn't do much, and I needed something big to kind of close out the game. 4/5 flyer, is pretty decent. So I figured I might as well take that. Although I did think about the others. Don't Make a Sound, pretty obvious card here. I will agree with you, Jeremy. Unwanted Remake is not a very good card. So in this case, ended up going with the card that was obviously going to be better than that. Hardened Escort, not this deck, right? It's a green-white card, so wasn't going to make the cut anyway. So, and then got gifted an Unwilling Vessel here. So not much to say about that. I could have taken the Central Elevator here if I really wanted to. It made it all the way around, but Unwilling Vessel, obviously the better pick. Here I take an Unsettling Twins. It's mostly filler. I don't think I'm going to play it, but I know that I'm not going to play Enter the Enigma.
Yeah, it's funny, like, Unsettling Twins is one of the best white commons in the set still, and now you're like, "I don't think I'm gonna play it," but I
I don't think
agree
I'm
with
gonna.
you.
Yeah, I'm just that far. I'm just like I'm gonna take it, obviously, but it's probably not making the deck.
Yeah.
Here, all the way pick 13, getting the wheel on the grand entryway from earlier that I couldn't pick. So I mean, I'm happy with that. Sure, why not?
It's not surprising you're the only deck that wants it, and clearly you're the only drafter of this at here, but yeah, just every pick, banger
Funny,
after banger.
funny nonetheless. Yeah, yeah. All right, and so we go into pack 3, pick 1. We do open, both a white rare and a white uncommon here. I did think about the Dazzling Theater here. Giving all my creatures convoke could be interesting with everything that I had, and untapping all of them during each other player's untap phase, also really a fun thing. But Trapped in the Screen is better here. Lionheart Glimmer, I thought about that as well, given the Gremlin Tamer ability to make 1/1s and then pump them all and swing. Could have been a good card. It's a little costly for what it is, I think, though, to basically give yourself an Anthem, but only on the attack. So Trapped in the Screen it was.
Yeah, this one's a close one for me. But I have a hard time passing down Trapped in the Screens. It answers everything,
Right.
and you're not really worried about losing unless you don't answer something from your opponent. And
Right.
So, yep, I agree with the Trapped in the Screen.
Here, I mean, like I just continue to get past premium removal, so I take the premium removal. You could. There really wasn't much else in this pack I was considering. I could have conceived. It's a little late though to think about splashing for the Bookworm. Duskmourn's Domination is obviously an inferior card to Sheltered by Ghosts in terms of its ability to remove something from the board. So, I mean, not a lot of thought going into this at that point. I mean, continuing, I could have taken a 4th copy of Trapped in the Screen here, but I figured, you know what, I'll go for the Ethereal Armor. Why not? Let's give something +10/+10 and first strike for 1 mana.
The Scrabbling Skullcrab is also interesting in this deck, but
yeah.
I don't think you need it. You're so good at being aggressive and drawing a ton of cards and just hitting your opponent that Ethereal Armor is for sure the right pick, even over Trapped in the Screen.
Although, spoiler, wait till the wheel.
Okay.
Next up, I'll take my second Gremlin Tamer. I mean, another opportunity for a Central Elevator Promising Stairs if I wanted it. But obviously, Gremlin Tamer it is. Here as well, another Trapped in the Screen. Like, I could have just played an entire deck of Trapped in the Screens at this point, but Glimmerburst is going to be, I think, the better card. I have plenty of removal at this point. Card draw is going to help me a lot more. Plus, it creates an enchantment to trigger other things.
Agreed.
Here, I took like a little bit of a detour. I took the Nashi. I said, you know what? This card is perfect for this deck if I can splash for it. Everything's an enchantment. I've got 3 legendaries as well. So, not counting Nashi. So I figure, I'm probably not going to play it at this point, but I don't need any of the others. So why not?
And that's a good way to be thinking, right? Like there's a point at which you could get more cards for your deck, but like you already have more than your deck here that you need to make cuts from. When you get to that point where you don't need more playables, you think about 2 things. One, is there any way to pivot this deck into some weirder version or like interesting splash version that can make it even more powerful? Kind of like how Paul Cheon did with splashing Valgavoth's Onslaught in his deck. And then past that is, can I upgrade anything? And, you might be like Meat Locker is interesting. But you have enough of all that going on. Like, I don't blame you for just picking whatever, like giving it a gamble here.
Right. And I have plenty of 2-drops, so I'm not going to take Acrobatic Cheerleader. Emerge from the Cocoon doesn't really go with the deck. So, I realize I'm probably not going to play Nashi, but if I did, man, it goes in this deck, so why not?
And the other interesting thing is that is 20 gems. I mean, some people don't, when you get your rares, you get gems for that when you pick it from drafts. People don't know that or don't think about that. And there's a lot of times you can just, people play to win, and 20 gems isn't a lot, so there is
Right.
that. But when you do draft a lot and you're paying for drafts, there's a little trick that helps you make it a little cheaper.
All right, and so another chance at that central elevator. I could have drafted 3 of these things if I really wanted to, but obviously Glimmerlight here is the pick. It's a good 2-drop. It's going to trigger things in my deck. So
yeah, I think this is a case where this is an upgrade over some things. Some of your 2s, like a Don't Make a Sound or even a Get Out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Here I take another Don't Make a Sound. I mean, could have taken the rare. Wasn't going to take the rare. It's not a rare really meant for limited. So, and there's really nothing else.
Yeah, in these cases, I'd probably try to choose like the mana type play, so Shepherding Spirits, but like you already have one of those, you already have a Megalodon, like yeah.
Right. And I'm probably not going to play either at this point, just because of, everything I already have in the deck. So, I take the Don't Make a Sound, although I recognize even it's not probably going to make the cut. Next up, I take the Murky Sewer, right? Because I just took the Nashi, so I figure, why not? And there's really nothing else I want in this, so I could take another underwater tunnel, but I'm probably not playing the first one. So here, I take Smoky Lounge Misty Salon because I do have the blue red Lighthouse land. I could have maybe taken the Raucous Carnival to give myself another one, but I don't actually have any red cards really. So there's not really a huge point to taking the Carnival. So I take the, Smoky Lounge Misty Salon. And here, as I promised, on the wheel, we've got the Skull Crab. So I do, in fact, take the Skull Crab. I do, in fact, play the Skull Crab. And I do, in fact, win the game with the Skull Crab 1 game. Creeping Peeper, good 2-drop here because of all of my things. It also helps cast Mind Skinner because Mind Skinner is an enchantment. So I'm really happy to pick that up so late. Found Footage, not going to play it, but not going to take the Plains. And then I get a Stalked Researcher as my last card as a final gift of this draft. So there you have it. Yeah, I mean, it was a roller coaster of a draft. I just kept getting surprised with the stuff that was getting sent to me. We can talk. Well, I think we're going to dive in and kind of go over the deck next and kind of what I made of it.
Before we take a look at Matt's final deck, we need to remind you to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. 70% of you are watching our videos but have yet to subscribe to see when we drop the latest strategy videos. And spoiler season for MTG Foundations officially starts the day this video is released. Be sure you subscribe to see our early takes on the set so you can go to your pre-release or first draft prepared.
All right, so here we have, after many iterations of this deck that I went back and forth with, many of those with Jeremy's advice and discussion between us on what I should actually put in it because I had so many choices. This is the deck that I ended up running with. I mean, I think a lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. Things that were obviously going to make the cut, like both Gremlin Tamers, both Inquisitive Glimmers, both Sheltered by Ghosts, all 3 trapped in the screens. The Mind Skinners, although a little bit on that, I think Jeremy's going to show an alternate formulation of the deck in a little bit that doesn't feature the Mind Skinners, which I think is just as good, if not better. But the rest of this is all, I think, pretty straightforward. It's probably more interesting to talk about some of the cards I cut and did not play in this, given kind of everything that we already had. I actually cut, and the last cut I made was the Fear of Surveillance, because it is such an excellent card. I was loath to cut it, right? But I had so many good 2-drops here that it was like, I have to cut something. Even without it, I have 15 enchantments in this deck. And so the extra enchantment was not a huge difference. The Surveil was honestly the thing I didn't want to lose. But at the end of the day, I had to make a choice, and I ended up cutting the Fear of Surveillance. I do believe the version you made, Jeremy, of it does have the Fear of Surveillance. But also, you're not running the Mind Skinners and things like that. Did not end up running the Nashi. Figured, there's just too much here to try and play with the mana base, especially if I'm going to run the Mind Skinners. It's going to be very hard to fit in a 3rd color and make sure I can get to that triple blue at least, before turn 8 or something like that. And I want to be able to play the Mind Skinner, earlier if I have it. I did end up cutting the Glimmerlight here. just again because I had so many good 2-drops that I figured, this just doesn't make the cut for this. But it could have easily, like, it was very much a borderline situation, and it could have made the cut in almost any other deck. The Don't Make a Sounds as well, Unsettling Twins, Clammy Prowler, things like that. I cut both the Megalodon and the Spirits, just given that I had so many other good playables that I wasn't looking to kind of like add a whole lot to the top end of the deck. So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up with it. As kind of a thing, I didn't trophy with this deck. It went 5-3, which was still good. But at the end of the day, the games that I lost were not games where I was like totally screwed. I got beat by like 2 life in most of these situations where I was going to kill the opponent on the next turn or mill them out on the next turn, and they just snuck in under the wire. I believe one of them I played a really, really mean green red aggro that just kind of got in a little bit under the wire there. I didn't draw the right removal. There were I made a couple of small misplays here or there, but I think they ultimately all of my losses were very close losses.
Yeah, and I took a look at a few of your games and kind of walked through to see, like, I want to see how the deck played out and all that. And when you lost, it was like against some brutal things that I haven't seen in this format since like week 1. So the green-red deck you played a Pyroclasm against you. You got all your like Gremlin Tamers out with all you had like 10 creatures on board with like 1/1s, and they Pyroclasmed you, and I have not seen that card since week 1.
Right, and I was surprised about it because then they immediately played like a couple of Flesh Burrowers after that. I'm like, why are you running Pyroclasm in a deck with all these like 2 toughness creatures? But I mean, it worked. I'm not gonna criticize someone else's play when they beat me. But yes, yeah. So there were definitely some things where it was a little bit brutal. But that's Magic sometimes, right? So sometimes you can draft the best deck and play it well and still not trophy. So
yeah, on this channel we don't the strength of the deck isn't like reflected by the record it went with. It's useful to tell people, but this deck was stronger than how it ended up. You got a little bit screwed here in mana in some cases even.
Yeah, there was one game where I flooded out, and there's not a lot you can do in that situation. You draw 4 or 5 lands in a row, your opponent's hitting gas. Okay, that's going to happen. So like I said, I mean, I'm happy with how the deck played. I'm happy with how I played it. I'm obviously happy with how I drafted it. So, that's all you can really ask for at the end of the day. But I do believe you had an alternate formulation of the deck that you wanted to share after you played around with it for a bit.
I do. So I exported that and went to these things. When you click deck export, by the way, you can click sealeddeck.tech and start playing around with people's draft decks. So just mentioning this in case people don't know that, like, it's good to share your 17 lands deck with your friends. Click on this. It instantly pops up the deck. You can click and drag these around, put things, different places, and whether it's in the deck or in the sideboard, then you click publish and share that. So probably useful for some of you that don't know that. So I'm going to bring up a published version that I had built. And so this is the sideboard up here. Down here is the actual deck. And so this deck has most of the same things Matt's deck had. I did remove the 2 Mind Skinners. Because I don't think it's as good. I don't think this deck needs that, right? It's so powerful to begin with, it doesn't need it. I don't blame you, Matt, for trying it. Like, that was kind of the point of the pack 1 pick 1 of it. Give it the experience. You got 2, give it a go. Completely understand that. But if your goal was simply to win, I think this one would do a little bit more of that. But yeah, I did get the Fear of Surveillance in.
Yeah, and the Glimmerlight.
And the Glimmerlight in. I got the extra bottomless pool in as well. And that was really the major difference. Now, I guess I can mention this too.
You did you also played the Spirits and the Megalodon.
Exactly. Because I do like the land cyclers. They don't perform great, but I like them because you can effectively replace lands with them. So you played 17 lands, and I will say, in this like debate of land count, I'm usually the one saying to do more. So I do think this is a case where it's right to do less. If you
And I
play
did think
really
about
late,
cutting to 16 in my deck to try and play like the Fear of Surveillance, right? I thought about cutting to 16, but then, you know, obviously with the triple blue of the Mind Skinners, I was like, absolutely not. I need to have 10 blue sources. Like,
you
so.
do. You need at least 10 for the Mind Skinner. So so yeah, I also did not play the Creeping Peeper because I didn't need it
Right.
as much. Now, I don't think it would be a bad card in this deck, right? Like you
Right.
have so many enchantments, it's effectively a mana dork.
Yep.
But you don't
We had
need
so much
that.
else.
Yeah, you have your 2 Inquisitive Glimmers already, which are basically mana dorks. And there's just too much other power to play. An interesting card we had a bit of a debate on. My original version of Matt's deck, I cut Unwilling Vessel because of it's not the best performing card by stats. But I agree with you, Matt. It's right to play in this deck. This is the nuts version of the deck where a 3-mana 3/2 vigilance that dies into some big creature when you had 15 enchantments to begin with. Oh, and by the way, your things that aren't enchantments all make enchantments. Your Glimmer Bursts, your
right, yeah,
your
right. Like every card in this deck is either an enchantment or makes an enchantment of some sort.
So you've got to play that Unwilling Vessel in the deck, and so that's in there. But yeah, I specifically like the land cyclers in here to smooth out so you don't get flooded, but also ensures you don't get mana screwed. And the only other thing this deck is missing is a little bit more top end just in case you need it.
Right.
And so that it answers all that.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair, you could basically 1-to-1 those cyclers for the Mind Skinners in the sense of those are top end, right? Like obviously they don't deal damage, but they end the game. And so you know that I think that's really the key difference is you went with the actual powerful creatures. I went with the thing that is just going to mill out my opponent and have the same effect. But I do like this version of the deck a lot. And I agree. It may have been, you know, better from a pure stats wise, you know, odds to win because Mind Skinner is a very good card, but it is also very easy to kill, right? You know, the 1 toughness, it makes it very easy to kill and remove, whereas the spirits and the Megalodon less so, right? It actually takes a murder or something else to kill them versus, you know, a Scorching Dragonfire, right?
That's all for today. Remember to subscribe to see our remaining Duskmourn episodes, as well as our upcoming Magic the Gathering Foundations spoiler reviews. See you in the next one.
See you in the next one. So I don't know how fast the spoilers will come for Foundations, but you know we could conceivably preview. We're gonna shoot a early spoiler video for that at some point. I don't know how many spoilers are out for it. I think there's a few already. Foundations previews. Yeah, there's a
probably drop a good. So MagicCon Las Vegas is starting tomorrow, and that's where they're going to release a good chunk. So there will be a chunk there, but then they do release them like equally for like the next 2 weeks after that or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, there's already a good 24 cards on Scryfall. So
probably all rares. I'm just curious.
Mostly rares. I mean, Llanowar Elves is on here, so. So not all rares, but mostly rares, and there's a lot of doubles because they do the alternative art and stuff. So but there's, I mean, maybe a week from now we could potentially do something on it, like an early preview.
Yeah, I'm all for. If we want to do more preview episodes than usual, we can.
I mean, I think there's going to be a bigger set, right, in terms of the number of cards.
Yeah,
I don't know how many cards it's supposed to have, but
it's going to be 350 plus.
Okay, that's a big set.
Yeah. So. Okay. No, now I got it more exactly. 361.
Okay. The set's going to have a lot of cats.
I hear that.
There's 9 Lives Familiar. There's Felidar Savior, Helpful Hunter. A lot of cats. A lot of Prideful Parent. Another cat. A Cat Knight. Savannah Lions.
Well, it's supposed to be in some degree a beginner set, and which is interesting. I feel like we just had all this with Bloomborough, but
well, I mean, this is more beginner, right? It's got Savannah Lions and Llanowar Elves, which is what I'm going to be really interested to talk about actually is power creep, right? Llanowar Elves used to be a good card. Llanowar Elves is no longer a good card.
Yeah, I guess I don't play enough constructed to really know, but
Right. But yeah, but like
Auto
from a
Wilds.
construct, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, it's not a bad draft card. Like in a draft, it sure it's a decent mono dork, right? Especially because you can play it turn one and like really spiral turn two. But yeah, in constructed, it's never going to see play. You're just not going to play it because there's better cards. So so it'll be interesting to talk about. Like even Savannah Lions, a 2/1 for one. Like okay, it's common, so that's great for draft, but no one's ever going to play it in constructed. So, anyways, that's
Power
for
creep
another
is
time.
real, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, they're reprinting Omniscience. That'll be
Did you
interesting.
hear that or see any? They just did an Omniscience draft for Duskmourn. So it was even ranked. It was on the so what it is, you automatically get an Omniscience in play base. Like you don't have to pay mana for any of your cards in this draft.
What? Okay.
And I think I don't know the exact rules. I think you get you draw 3 cards to start. That's it.
Okay.
And then you also get every turn 1 mana of every color to be able to play any abilities or whatever. So that includes like unlock rooms. Like so, the first version you can play. You
You can play for free, and then you
get
get to unlock the others. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is even some point to do things like add maybe a couple basic lands to your draft deck, because if you needed to, like, there are some cards that are like double blue or something for an ability, or there.
Man, all I would do in that for the draft is like sort 17 lands by win rate and just like immediately, like every pick, look up the highest win rate card and just pick it. Like, you know.
I guess it plays out quite a bit different. Like the number one thing that you need is card draw, and I guess that makes sense.
Sure. Right. Yeah, that makes sense because you only start with a few cards in hand. Yeah. So I would. Yeah, that's true. Like Glimmer Burst would be high on the priority list, things like that. But like by and large, I would probably just like take whatever the highest win rate card in the pack is.
Right, and then things that are good but unable to be played are much better, right? Like Marina Vendril or whatever, one of each color or whatever. That card is actually good because you don't have to pay that, right? And what's the like Valgavoth, and then there's like the Doomsday thing or things.
Yeah, the Doomsday Excruciator that costs like 6 black. Yeah, that would actually be playable. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. You probably don't just go by win rate, but like that would be kind of my thinking. I mean, and obviously you still want a certain amount of removal. You still want, because your opponents are going to be playing stupid shit turn one, so you're going to need removal. But yeah, I mean, anyways, yeah. So that would be interesting. I should watch that. Did they film it?
Yeah,
like is it on YouTube or something?
Yeah, it was just a format that a lot of YouTubers moved to because they're not actually, most players are not done with Duskmourn. Like this is being compared to an all-time format, but since they're doing it all day, every day for a living,
right?
You switch.
Although I did draft last night, and it took a long time. It wasn't that late. It was like 8:30, and it took a long time to find a pod. The draft did not go well. I went 0-3. So, but like, I kind of got. I mean, I didn't get screwed, but like, I ended up in black red, and I didn't have like a lot of the support for it. I didn't get the signpost on common, so.
I might be sitting at my all-time high win rate
nice.
For a set. I'm at 66% win rate in Duskmourn. Nice. So yeah,
awesome.
But it's true that I have been playing, like I've been playing hard to win and not to experiment at all. Like I haven't been playing any of the weird rares and stuff.
Right.
But
I still have not drafted. A blue red. So I'm pretty proud of that one.
I don't think I have either. And the funny thing is, I'm not even avoiding it now. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not favoring it either. But I would play blue X control, like any color, at this point in the format. And yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
Yeah.
Let me just shoot a quick closing here, I guess, and then I might even add in some of our talk as like a whatever post credits type of
credits. Yeah.
Because some of that was good.